A study from NASA warns there could be record flooding, possibly every day or two in some cities in the next decade, and you can blame it all on the moon.
Well, if you think flooding along the Louisiana coast is bad now, just wait a few years.
Earth's moon is the only place beyond Earth where humans have set foot. The brightest and largest object in our night sky, the moon makes Earth a more livable planet by moderating our home planet's wobble on its axis, leading to a relatively stable climate. It also causes tides, creating a rhythm that has guided humans for thousands of years. However, when the Apollo astronauts returned from the moon, it was not without strange and dangerous surprises. The dust that clung to their spacesuits caused their throats to ache and eyes to water. The particles were sharp and abrasive, and the astronauts dubbed it lunar hay fever. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. The moon holds secrets that could have dire consequences for humanity's future, as NASA experts warn about the catastrophic flooding that it could unleash on Earth. What is happening on the moon that could trigger such massive floods? How will this affect us? Join us as we explore this mystery and uncover the chilling truth about the moon's impact on our planet. The moon may seem like a peaceful neighbour, but it has a lot more going on beneath the surface than meets the eye. It's only about a third the size of Earth, with a radius of 1,018 miles or 1,740 kilometres, but it's an impressive 238,855 miles, 384,400 kilometres away from us. In fact, you could fit 30 Earth-sized planets in the space between us. While the Earth takes around 365 days to orbit the Sun, the Moon completes an orbit around Earth in 27 Earth days and rotates or spins in the same amount of time. However, because we're moving and spinning too, it appears to us that the Moon circles the Earth every 29 days. But don't let its calm appearance deceive you. The Moon was once home to active volcanoes that have since gone dormant. Thanks to probes and landings, we have discovered that its surface is bombarded by asteroids, meteoroids, and comets due to its thin atmosphere. The constant impacts have caused countless craters, including the massive Tycho crater, which spans over 52 miles, 85 kilometers. As a result, the Moon's surface is now fragmented into a rubble pile of charcoal grey powdered dust and rocky debris known as lunar regolith. This might not sound like a big deal, but it's actually a nightmare for any astronaut hoping to explore the Moon. Why? Because the regolith is electrically charged and sticks to everything, creating chaos wherever it lands. However, have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered how a small silvery ball can have such a massive impact on our lives down here on Earth? It's fascinating to consider what would happen if the Moon was suddenly to disappear. If the Moon were to suddenly disappear, or if it never existed in the first place, would our world be plunged into chaos, or would we not even notice? The answer may surprise you. At first, we might not even see a difference if the Moon were gone, but as time passed, we would begin to notice the small changes in our world. Without the Moon's bright light, our nighttime skies would be much darker, and the stars would shine even brighter. For stargazers and astronomers, this would be a dream come true, with crystal clear views of the cosmos. However, for other living creatures, a moonless world would be disastrous. For example, coral, crabs, worms, and fish use the moonlight as a cue for reproduction. It is unclear how these species would react to a world without the Moon's light. The absence of eclipses would also be a great loss for skywatchers, but it's only a minor change compared to the larger impact of a world without the Moon. One of the most immediate effects of a world without the Moon would be on the ocean's tides. These tides are caused by the gravitational forces of the Moon and Sun acting on Earth's oceans. When the Moon is directly overhead, the oceans facing it bulge up to create higher tides. On the opposite side of the Earth, there is also a high tide due to the difference in gravitational attraction. This creates two low tides between the two high tides as the Earth spins. However, the Moon's 27-day orbit and the Sun's influence on tides make the system a bit more complicated. The Sun's effect is about half as strong as the Moon's. When the Sun, Moon, and Earth align, the combined forces produce spring tides, with higher high tides and lower low tides. When the Sun, Moon and Earth are at right angles, neap tides occur, with lower high tides and higher low tides. Without the Moon's strong influence, the Earth's tides would be simpler, but significantly weaker. So, wiping out the Moon would have its fair share of immediate consequences, both good and bad. But it would hardly be the end of the world. The real trouble would arise over time, as the Earth's rotation destabilizes. Currently, the Earth's axis is tilted at 23.4 degrees with respect to our orbit around the Sun. However, there is a slight wobble in this spin, similar to a spinning top slowly tracing a circle. This gentle wobble takes around 26,000 years to go full circle, moving the Earth's axis by just 2.4 degrees. But without the Moon's stabilizing influence, this wobble would become erratic and extreme. At times, the Earth's axis would point straight up and down at right angles to the Earth's orbit of the Sun, causing the disappearance of seasons and equal length of day and night. At other times, the Earth would tilt all the way over and lie on its side in relation to its orbit around the Sun, resulting in the poles burning hot and the equator freezing cold. The removal of the Moon would essentially spell out extreme climate change. Temperature and daylight differences would be enormous throughout the year, and different parts of the world would experience ice ages every few thousand years. Luckily for us, the Moon is here to stay for the foreseeable future. So, are you ready now for some out-of-this-world news? NASA scientists and researchers from the University of Hawaii have discovered that we're about to witness the unsettling effects of the Moon's position change, known as the Moon wobble. It turns out that the Moon, which is already shrouded in mystery, has yet another trick up its sleeve that could spell trouble for us here on Earth. As the world grapples with the effects of climate change, rising sea levels are already causing havoc for coastal communities. But things could get even worse with the Moon wobble. You see, the Moon's gravity tugs at the Earth and creates 2 tides per day as the planet rotates. However, the Moon's orbit around the Earth is tilted at a 5-degree angle to the Earth's orbit around the Sun. This means that over time, the Moon's orbit appears to change, and it completes a full cycle every 18.6 years. During this nodal cycle, the Moon's gravitational attraction can affect one of the 2 daily high tides, making it higher or lower than usual. While scientists have long known about the Moon wobble, the potential consequences are only now becoming apparent. NASA is particularly concerned about how this phenomenon could worsen the already existing climate concerns. By now, you must have realized that the Moon isn't just wobbling, it still has a profound impact on Earth's tides. The science community had already anticipated that tidal flooding would worsen, even without accounting for the Moon's wobble. But to make accurate predictions about these tides, scientists must sift through a great deal of complex data that includes factors like weather patterns, astronomical events, and regional tide variations. The Moon wobble is now an additional factor they must incorporate into their models. NASA experts have warned that the Moon wobble will elevate sea levels, resulting in significantly increased flooding along every US coastline in the coming years. Nevertheless, we may get a brief respite while the Moon is still in its tide amplifying phase. Coastal areas around the US mainland, including Hawaii and Guam, will experience a surge in flooding during the highest seas, intensified by the Moon cycle. However, northern shores, such as those in Alaska, may be spared for a while as the land continues to rise due to long-term geological processes. Let's break it down. With the Moon wobble on the horizon, we're all asking the same question: how bad will the floods get? Well, brace yourself, because NASA's latest projections are nothing short of terrifying. They're forecasting that the amount of flooding disasters we'll face could triple or even quadruple compared to what we've seen recently. To put it into perspective, we're talking about 600 floods in 2019 alone, and the situation is only getting worse. What's more concerning is that low-lying areas are more at risk, which means they'll be hit the hardest. But what would these floods look like exactly? Researchers have been working tirelessly to predict their appearance, and the results are sobering. Picture this: floods coming in clusters that could last for weeks on end, with cities getting hit on consecutive days or every other day. To come up with these projections, experts have been monitoring 89 tide gauge stations across every coastal state and territory except for Alaska. They've even created a unique statistical approach to map out the most common sea level scenarios and flooding thresholds, and it doesn't look good. Phil Thompson, who is an assistant professor at the University of Hawaii and the lead author of the study, has highlighted that high tide floods are often perceived as less significant than storm surges. However, flooding that occurs regularly, 10 to 15 times a month, can cause substantial economic harm, damage critical infrastructure, and lead to food instability. Farmers may also lose their crops and livestock, and seeping cesspools can become a public health issue. In the United States alone, the damage could amount to trillions of dollars. The floods caused by this moon wobble are not typical and have been dubbed mutant floods, posing a long-term challenge for the United States and other coastal areas worldwide. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson has stressed that the combination of rising sea levels, the moon's gravitational pull, and climate change will continue to exacerbate coastal flooding. NASA's Sea Level Change team is providing crucial information to help cities at risk take preventative measures to protect the environment and people's livelihoods. Planning must begin now, as flooding can persist for a decade once it starts, and NASA's disclosure of these findings could make a significant difference in preventing future flooding disasters. Let us know what you think of NASA's flood warning in the comments below.